When I did a review on Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, I came up with a good metaphor for it. It's like having a friend who you lost contact with, who went off the deep end, cut off contact with you before you could even talk to him again by preemptively blocking you on social media, and then he ended up surrounding himself with the worst people, like the ones who just enable his downward spiral. Is all you can do is sit back and watch his descent into insanity from a distance, being able to do absolutely nothing whatsoever except wish you could tell him, why did you do that? Or walk away and try to forget about him, only to remember something when something either really bad happens or when someone brings up memories of him or somehow, and you're like, yeah, he was cool, then he went fucking crazy. And Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, on the other hand, was like finally being able to talk to that one person who is cool in the other class who everybody liked, and finding out that he is, in fact, a cool guy. And yet you never had the chance to talk to him because he was in another class, and the only thing you regret is not talking to him sooner. For the longest time, Digimon games were terrible cash-ins, ranging from okay to, oh god, what is this crap level terrible. But ever since Bandai increased the budget for Digimon games that targeted the same group of people who enjoyed the older seasons when they were younger, the quality has increased. Sure, the Digimon World games were pretty meh because they were trying to go for a higher budget version of a PS1 game that wasn't very good to begin with, but it had fans. There was that one RPG remake of Digimon Adventure that I never played or gave a shit about. And then on the other hand was Cyber Sleuth, which was what Digimon fans had wanted for years. A good, solid Digimon RPG that for the most part nailed the feel of the anime, and it was quite a fun and unique game. Its gameplay was fun even if it could be described as discount Shin Megami Tensei. Its story felt unique for a modern game. It had a great soundtrack that actually got a separate CD release. It felt pretty content and gameplay packed for a Vita game. And well, I recommended it to quite a few people who didn't even care about Digimon because it's an underrated PS4 role playing game. In between a possible new Digimon story game for the PS4 and Cyber Sleuth, Bandai Namco announced and released a new Digimon story game, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory. Now, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth's ending wasn't real open for a sequel, so the developers took the route of, say, Half-Life Opposing Force and Blue Shift, or Halo 3 ODST by having a sequel where you play as someone who was a typical non-player in the last game. And in this case, it's a hacker as part of one of the teams that worked with one of the main factions in the last game. And the thing is, I think the developers actually said that this game was somewhat of a stopgap too, in between a new Digimon game on the PS4 made for the PS4 from the ground up, and Cyber Sleuth, which was a port of a Vita game to the PS4, but with 60 FPS in that. Anyhow, it's now time to talk about the game, so let's start off by talking about the story of this game, without spoiling much the story in the last game. In Cyber Sleuth, it's the future, and there's a second lifestyle world that actually took off instead of being used only among the bottom feeders and furries of the world who couldn't make it in the real world. You were a kid who was separated from his body after an attack by a mysterious creature called an Eater in a 3D virtual reality world called Eden, which was run by a Google-like company called Kamishiro, which is just as dysfunctional and out of touch as real-world tech companies are. Anyhow, in Cyber Sleuth, while the Eaters normally end up leaving people just in comas in the hospital, you end up logging out right as the Eater is eating you up, and so you end up appearing in the real world as Data in the middle of some Japanese street. After a crazy detective finds you, you later find your real body in the local hospital in a coma, and you find yourself with a new ability to jump into digital devices as your main goal is to try to go back to your own body. And throughout the plot of the game, you end up also managing to uncover some big conspiracy run by this Google like company that ends up affecting everyone. And you end up also having to find out the secret of a lot of things in the game. And I'll just say this, in this game, nothing is as it seems. In Hacker's Memory, you play in the same setting as a kid who has his account stolen by a hacker and later joins a hacker group after a mysterious man calls him up and tells him that he found the person who did it. You take on hacking cases and jobs as you team up with several others, including a nerd who's really trying to get laid, a shut-in with extremely good hacking abilities, and a pro hacker who has the sense of justice of an image board user, preferring to show off-the-rails style criminals image board style justice straight out of the stories you'd read on 4chan, Dramatica, or Kiwi Farms. I'm not making this up either. Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory takes place in the same setting, starting off not long after Cyber Sleuth's story did, or even around the same time even. I think that's when the game story starts. Some of the same events you see in Cyber Sleuth are here too, as the game really tries to, let's just say, have you in some of the same events as the first game too, and it kind of feels a bit forced, if you know what I mean. Like, here's something that happened in Cyber Sleuth, and here you are right where so and so happened, and here you are bumping into a character from Cyber Sleuth for no reason. Now, Cyber Sleuth's story was great in the sense that it not only told an interesting story, but it accurately nailed the feel of the internet in the current day, without going into any political bullshit, of course. In Cyber Sleuth, you had a big conspiracy with an untrustworthy Google-style internet corporation, side missions that mocked everything from losers with waifus who will never reproduce to Wikipedia vandals, and the general feel that online, nothing is really as it seems. Is you could easily get fucked over by people you assume are your friends because they change sides on you. Or how that person you see online isn't quite who you think they are. Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory is a similar game feel-wise, however it takes place from a different perspective. Instead of playing as a kid with a unique power, you play as another silent protagonist who has marginally more personality to him. And this is reflected in the sense that you feel more often the protagonist is talking to other characters even when he has no dialogue. Yet you don't really get any dialogue choices like in Western RPGs. He's a hacker who didn't want to get into hacking and he just wants his account back, and who's part of a hacking team that ends up being Cyber Vigilantes, probably the most overused hacker archetype in gaming post-2007. It's a lot darker than Cyber Sleuth, and Cyber Sleuth was pretty dark at times, especially when you got to the part where the Digimon and the Eaters are all explained. The main thing about the story is this. It's not as good by far. It feels very uneven, and I honestly couldn't care for it. I couldn't give less of a shit. And there's quite a few reasons why. Maybe it's because at times the game feels like it's trying too hard to reference the events of the first. Maybe it's because you sort of know the ending already if you beat the first one. And that game's ending was not very open to sequels at all. Maybe it's because the 8 or 9 chapters I played, they were just boring. I played 8 or 9 chapters and I got bored because nothing really big happens. I couldn't really care about these, like, hacker people. I couldn't at all. I couldn't care what was going on, especially when you compare the storyline to Cyber Sleuth, where lots of stuff is going on and it keeps your attention really well. It does, however, keep the same feel Cyber Sleuth did, which is great because nowadays the internet is a literal minefield. When you have to shield yourself from lots of risks, including friends flipping over into being crazy people out for your blood, social media histories turning to blackmail, and getting cut off by other friends for either stating your opinion, voting for the wrong person, or posting to the wrong website, at that point you might as well delete all your social media accounts so you don't end up like Tim Soray did. Unless, of course, you have balls and don't mind risking it all for big rewards. But then again, this is the age where slapping made-up pronouns on your bio and sexuality flag pins on your clothing has gone from being something you'd see in fringe parts of the web 6 years ago to being on every snowflake social media profile, but maybe that's a good thing. like looking at a bottom of a used car and seeing subframe rot and damage, or that time I test drove a used car that overheated the second it got off the used car lot. Like, maybe you should walk away and let some other sucker deal with it. This feel is present in Cyber Sleuth Hacker's memory, except instead of someone destroying your reputation because they think it's funny to destroy everything you worked for after you looked at them the wrong way one day and because they're never going to do anything in life other than flip burgers, it's the hacker stealing bank accounts and identity for money and to hide their real identity from others, since Eden, the game's virtual world successor to the internet, requires real identities to be linked. Just like what the major companies want for the internet. Just like in the real world, you have unsuspecting online users being easily lured and catfished into doing stupid shit. In Cyber Sleuth Hacker's memory, the game's format is similar to that of Cyber Sleuth. You take missions that range from mundane places such as your former high school to stopping out of control hackers, and some missions even involve crazy internet eccentrics, and they can turn real dark real fast. Especially since one of the main characters seems to spot that happening from a distance. I won't spoil it, but I will say that Western developers couldn't get away with some of the stuff that happens in this game, for sure. The main thing I don't like about Hacker's Memory storyline is that, well, in Hacker's Memory, at times, the main story thread doesn't seem to flow as well as Cyber Sleuth did, especially since you feel isolated from the action in the first part to an extent. I mean, really. The main storyline of this game felt like I was retreading the story of Cyber Sleuth, with some missions running parallel to those of the original, complete with hacking the same computers and going to the same places, sometimes even seeing the same exact events. The side missions did not suffer this issue as much, but there were a few side missions that felt like copy-pastes of Cyber Sleuth side missions, at the same places, doing the same things, but you just fight a different Digimon. At times there also felt like there was potential for the plot to go more places, yet it felt like it was never explored, like they were just playing with ideas this game. There were also a few opportunities to choose what happens in the story, but there was nothing major, especially when you compare this game to other games that had decision making, such as older computer RPGs, or even more basic systems, such as Shin Megami Tensei's alignment system. I guess the main thing this game did for me in the story department was make me remember why I love Cyber Sleuth's story so much, and why I love that game so much too. It was a video game that felt like you were in a modern society where tech copied from some sci-fi movie was released everywhere, while ignoring the criticisms said movies and fiction had about these technologies. Complete with an out-of-touch company that doesn't give a shit about anyone. And I mean, look, the other day Google just removed the ability to just click a save image button. You now have to right click and hit save image, and it doesn't always give you the image you want either. And yeah, that just happened. Tech companies are out of touch, just like the company in this game is. And while Cyber Sleuth kept my attention the whole way through, I played about, what, 25, 30 hours of Hacker's Memory before losing interest in it. Sure, there's a few new features added, but overall, the gameplay changes aren't enough to hold my interest. And let's talk about the gameplay now, shall we? Now, in the gameplay department, Hacker's Memory is somewhat like a third version of Pokemon, as it features some gameplay tweaks and improvements over Cyber Sleuth. While the core battle system is the same, there are a lot of changes, from minor cosmetic changes like attack animations still displaying for missed attacks instead of just doing nothing like Pokemon did, to new and improved hacking skills. For example, Function Call, which summons an instant random battle no longer has a slow animation. You also get an ability that speeds up movement and another that lets you fix broken items, which can be used with some specific items scattered around the game world to get items, and audio logs, which are a new feature in Hacker's Memory. There is a new battle style called a Domination Battle that combines tactical RPG elements with the main battle system. It involves both fighting rival hackers and capturing spaces on a battlefield to win. There is also now a Digimon market where you can buy Digimon without having to grind up to analyze them. However, perhaps the biggest change in Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory is that it has more Digimon in it now, featuring over 320 Digimon this time around, and an update added a few more already. Just like how Cyber Sleuth had updates with more free Digimon, I would not be shocked if this were the case. The Digifarm and Evolution system, of course, make a return, and so does the online multiplayer I could care less about. Just like in the original, they are addicting as you end up evolving and devolving your Digimon while also leveling them up a bunch so you can digivolve them into a high-leveled form with high stats. With the Abby stat keeping track of how often you've done this and how much you've leveled up your Digimon. However, now you can customize your character to some extent and put accessories on your Digimon for online. The difficulty is somewhat more balanced, yet you'll finding yourself switching difficulty levels before bosses at times. On hard mode, it can still go from easy to beat enemies to as hard as the PS1 Digimon games, as in holy shit, how did I die that quick difficulty. Most of the soundtrack is the same as the original game. However, from what I can tell, there are in fact a few new songs in the game too. All in all, Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory is an iffy buy. While it's easy to recommend the original, especially at the current price it goes for used on Amazon, Hacker's Memory is another story. If you played Cyber Sleuth for the gameplay and just mashed the X button all the way through the storyline, you wouldn't mind the fact that the story is a bit dodgy. I mean, if Pokemon can have a truly flimsy excuse for a story, yet sell millions, then for some people it's really not a big deal. On the other hand, if you enjoyed Cyber Sleuth's story, don't buy this game. It's just boring, dull, uninteresting. I really couldn't give a shit about what happened. And while Cyber Sleuth hooks you from the minute you insert the disc into the PS4 to keep you playing and guessing on what will happen next, Hacker's Memory just isn't the same. It's just not a very good game overall. Even if you just want it for the gameplay, wait for a price drop. And even some of the games that also had the same type of premise where you're playing as an NPC, like BioShock 2 or Halo 3 ODST, didn't just blatantly retread the same story as the last one. And on the other hand, in Japan, they got a much better version of Cyber Sleuth on the PS4. The Japanese version not only lets you import your Digimon from the last title after you beat the game, but get this, the PS4 version of Cyber Sleuth comes with the PS4 version of the first one along with Hacker's Memory, which didn't come out in Japan until Hacker's Memory came out. That's right, you're getting two games, and at that price point, it would make sense because Hacker's Memory is essentially an expansion pack worth of content. And if that were the case, I'd recommend buying this game even just for Cyber Sleuth because it's like buying a Game of the Year edition of an older game. You get a good game and an expansion pack that might or might not be worth playing, but in the case of this, you can easily skip this game. Unless you're a hardcore Digimon fan, or when the price drops to something more reasonable instead of $60. Go play the first one instead, it's a much better game. There's a reason I called it a future cult classic when it was new, because it pretty much is. And that's all that needs to be said, gamers. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more video game reviews.